There are older women who live alone and are at peace, and that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Because when a woman does not need anyone to validate her existence, when she is no longer available to play the role others expected of her, the world looks at her strangely, as if living without a partner was some kind of moral failure, as if life only counts when someone chooses you. Meanwhile, a man in the same situation is called independent, interesting, doing his own thing. How convenient, right? Stay with me. Gabriel here. Welcome to the Stoic Garden. Today we're going to walk through 9 truths every grown woman should understand about living alone later in life, so you can see the real cost, but also the real power of that decision, and come away with a steadier, fairer view of yourself, along with the tools to stop depending on anyone's approval. By the end, you will have a mental framework to protect your peace, your dignity, and your life. And the last point leaves you with something very few women truly dare to build. Let's begin. 1. Accept that living alone is not failure. It is choice and consequence. The first thing that needs to come off the table is that childish idea that if you are alone, you lost. That is high school thinking, not adult thinking. There are older women who live alone because they chose peace, because they chose silence, because they chose to stop bargaining away their dignity at someone else's table where it was taken for granted. There are also women who live alone because life simply happened that way, without asking permission. A divorce, widowhood, children who built their own lives, friendships that slowly faded. And here comes the point many people struggle to accept. Just because something is a consequence does not make it a tragedy. It makes it real. And reality is the only place where you can build anything worthwhile. The problem is that chosen solitude gets called selfishness, and the kind of solitude that makes people uncomfortable gets called sad. That is where the trick shows itself. They are not worried about the woman. They are worried that she is no longer available to play the role they expected from her. The caregiving woman, the woman who holds everything together, the woman who always has one more chair at the table for anyone at all. When that chair disappears, some people get anxious, as if someone turned off the hallway light. Living alone at that stage is a brutal filter. It brings to the surface what was just noise and what was truly essential. It strips away social distractions and leaves you standing in front of the mirror with no audience. And of course that carries weight, because when there is no applause, there is no anesthesia either. But it also gives back something worth gold: the right to decide without explaining yourself. Because living alone does not mean having no one. It means having control over your space, your time, your energy. It means coming home and not feeling like you have to account for your face, your tiredness, your mood. Can you imagine what that means for someone who spent decades measuring her words, her gestures, the whole atmosphere, so no one would get upset? Now let us not get poetic. This is not some postcard version of freedom with pretty background music. Living alone also demands something from you. It demands effort, responsibility, the ability to handle things yourself. When a light bulb burns out, when something hurts, when paperwork needs to be handled, there is no, "Honey, can you help me?" There is action. There is a plan. There is character. And whether you like it or not, that makes you more grown on the inside. That is why I say choice and consequence. Not to judge, but to wake you up. If it was a choice, then own it with pride and discipline. If it was a consequence, then own it with dignity and structure. In both cases, the mistake is living it from a place of shame, as if your marital status were your market value. Maturity means looking at that reality and not inventing stories just to look good. It means accepting that living alone can be a quiet victory or a hard season, but never a moral sentence. And when you stop apologizing for existing exactly as you are, that is when real peace begins, the kind that does not depend on someone else confirming that you are doing fine. 2. Understand why many women regain peace when they stop pleasing others. There is a kind of peace that does not come because you finally fixed yourself. It comes because you stopped performing. And for many older women, performing was a full-time job for years. Smiling when they did not feel like it, softening their tone so the other person would not get upset, anticipating everyone else's needs as if they were internal alarms. People-pleasing is a very socially acceptable drug. No one criticizes it to your face. They reward it. They tell you that you are good, thoughtful, so sweet, and you, just wanting to be loved, become an expert at swallowing what you feel. Until one day your body sends you the bill, your mind sends you the bill, and you do not have enough energy left even to pretend. When a woman stops pleasing others, it does not mean she becomes cold. It means she finally becomes fair to herself. She stops offering herself like customer service. She starts deciding calmly. She starts saying no without explaining her childhood, her history, and her trauma, as if she were on trial. And yes, that bothers some people. Of course it bothers them. They lost the button they used to press to make her do what they wanted. The most ironic part is that many times the problem is not even the bad man. Sometimes it is the whole environment. Family, friends, neighbors, all those people who give opinions as if they were paying the mortgage. And that is where solitude begins to act like medicine. Because when you live alone, the social noise gets quieter. There are no more witnesses to your obedience. There is no audience for your sacrifice. And that, even if it sounds sad, is freeing. In the middle of that transition, an uncomfortable question shows up. And if you ask it honestly, it can change your life. How many people were you keeping happy so you would not have to face your own discomfort? Because pleasing is not always kindness. Sometimes it is fear of conflict, fear of being left, fear of being judged, and living alone forces you to look at that fear without distractions. The Stoics understood this without turning it into drama. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who had that moral self-reliance about him, left behind a line that hits like a hammer when you spend your life chasing approval. Trust in your own conscience is worth more than the unstable applause of public opinion. He did not say it to make you feel special. He said it because applause is volatile. Today they clap for you, tomorrow they point at you. If you base your peace on that, you are lost. That is why many women regain peace, because they stop living in always available mode. They stop trying to be acceptable to everyone. And when that happens, the whole system resets. The heart slows down, the body rests, the mind stops scanning for social threats, as if it were at war. That peace feels strange at first, like turning off music that has been playing for years, and suddenly hearing your own breathing. Of course, there is a social cost. Some people pull away when they can no longer use you. Some people call you selfish the first time you choose yourself. It is almost a compliment, even when they say it with venom. It means they had you tamed before, and now they do not. And that is the kind of peace you cannot buy. You choose it. So understand this. When an older woman lives alone and feels calmer, it is not magic. It is a strategic retreat. It is less exposure to everyday manipulation, less need to prove herself, a life with less emotional debt. And when the urgency to please finally dies down, space opens up for something hardly anyone prioritizes: living with self-respect, even when it makes other people uncomfortable. 3. Recognize the real price. Loneliness, but also freedom and control. Because yes, living alone has a price, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you a postcard. There are heavy days, Sundays that stretch on forever, nights when the silence does not feel like peace, it feels like emptiness. And that is where many people get scared. They confuse emptiness with "I am missing someone," and that is not always true. Sometimes you are not missing someone. Sometimes you are missing structure. You are missing purpose. You are missing a plan for when the day slows down and the mind starts inventing stories. Because the mind is that creative when it has nothing better to do. Real loneliness is not being without people. It is feeling that no one is there to hold you up when something breaks. When you get sick. When there is a problem with the bank. When something at home stops working, and you are the one who has to decide and the one who has to pay. That is exhausting, of course it is. It is not romanticism, it is adulthood. That is why it is called independence, not a vacation. But now comes the part no one tells you with the same clarity. That price buys something enormous. It buys freedom. It buys control. It buys a kind of peace that has nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with not being in a place where you are worn down every day by tiny battles that should not even exist. That older woman who lives alone is often not running away from love. She is running away from exhaustion. Because when you control your space, you control your energy. There are no more arguments over nonsense, no more tension hanging in the air over things that never get said, no need to walk on emotional tiptoe. You can rest without feeling like someone is evaluating you. You can be in a bad mood without apologizing for being human. And yes, there are moments when you feel the edge of it. When you see couples on the street, When someone says "my husband" as if he were part of their body, when a family invitation arrives and you have to decide whether to go or not, with no elegant excuses. In those moments, one useful truth reveals itself. What hurts is not solitude itself. What hurts is what society told you solitude meant. The smart thing is to look at it with open eyes. Loneliness will exist even if you live with someone. There are entire marriages where people sleep next to a stranger. And there are women living alone who sleep with a calm heart. So do not idealize it or demonize it. Accept the cost and enjoy the benefit. If you do not do that, you either become bitter or naive. The key is understanding that loneliness is a component, not a sentence. And freedom is a tool, not a prize. If you have freedom but do not know how to use it, freedom leaves you with a big house and a small mind. But if you learn to use it, you become the owner of your life, not a guest in someone else's. 4. Strengthen your emotional security and stop depending on male approval. Because there are women who say, "I'm fine on my own," but deep down they are still waiting for the text, the look, the compliment, the reassurance. They change homes, change routines, buy themselves peace, and still keep asking for emotional permission in their own minds. Depending on male approval is like living with an external meter for your worth. If a man wants you, you feel alive. If he does not, you feel invisible. And that dynamic is dangerous, not because of the man, but because it makes you easy to manipulate, easy to move around. A crumb of attention lifts you up, a silence tears you down. That is not love, that is a rope around your neck. Emotional security is built through small, repeated decisions that prove you can hold yourself up. Not through speeches, not through pretty phrases, through actions, following through when you say you will, setting boundaries even when your voice shakes, choosing yourself even when no one applauds. That is where self-respect is born, and once it is born, everything changes. In the middle of this, there is a question worth more than 100 pieces of advice. What part of you still believes you need to be chosen in order to matter? Because if your self-esteem depends on being preferred, you will always be competing, even when you say you are not. You will feel like you are losing whenever someone else gets attention. You will live comparing yourself, and that is a beautifully decorated prison. Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor and still spoke to himself like a man demanding character, summed it up with a simple idea. If your peace depends on what other people think, you are renting out your mind. He did not say that to sound profound. He said it because he saw how people destroy themselves over the opinions of others, and you do not need to be an empress to understand that. You need to be honest. Now be careful with the modern trap. Many women fall into the role of "I don't need anyone" as a mask for pride, but they are still wounded. They become distant, hard, and call it strength. No. Strength is not closing your heart. Strength is opening it with discernment. It is being able to feel affection without turning it into dependence. Emotional security does not take away your desire for companionship. It takes away the desperation. And once the desperation is gone, you start choosing better. You stop accepting crumbs because you are afraid of being alone. You stop replying to just anyone who looks your way as if they were giving you oxygen. You breathe on your own, and if someone comes along, they should add to your life, not manage your self-worth. That is the real shift. This is not about hating men or living at war with love. It is about making sure your value is not in anyone else's hands. Because when your value comes back home, when you keep it within yourself, the performance is over. You can love without begging. You can be alone without feeling like less. And that is when solitude stops being a threat and becomes a conscious choice. 5. Protect your finances and your health, because without a plan, independence becomes a silent burden. This is where the fantasies fall apart. You can have peace of mind, you can keep your home in order, but if your body starts failing or your money gets messy, solitude stops being a choice and becomes an emergency. A lot of people talk about living alone as if it were only an emotional issue. It is not. It is logistics. It is management. It is foresight. It is knowing how much comes in, how much goes out, and what it costs to exist without asking anyone's permission. Because when you live alone, there is no romantic plan B, there is no "we'll figure it out later." You figure it out. And if you do not, reality catches up with you wearing a very cruel smile. And let me tell you something no one likes to hear, but it is the most grown-up truth in this whole chapter. Independence does not show on the easy days. It shows when something hurts and you cannot ignore it. It shows when an unexpected expense hits. It shows when your energy drops and you're no longer 20 years old, able to improvise your way through everything. That is when you find out whether you were independent or just comfortable. Sometimes the problem is not a lack of money. It is a lack of order. Because there are women who have been strong their whole lives, but strong does not mean organized. And without organization, you become a slave to your own neglect. You pay more because you did not plan. You get sicker because you did not protect your habits. You get stressed because you have no cushion. And then you wonder why freedom feels so heavy. In the middle of all this, an uncomfortable but useful question shows up. Are you living alone or are you just getting by? Because those are not the same thing. Living alone with structure is power. Living day to day is anxiety dressed up in pretty decor. And by the way, worrying about this does not make you materialistic. It means you respect yourself. It means you are not leaving your future to luck as if luck were your personal assistant. Your health is part of your finances too. If you do not sleep, if you eat whatever is easiest, if you do not move your body, if you keep putting off checkups, you are charging yourself in installments. And the interest is high. Real independence means having a basic system that holds you up when you do not feel like it, when you are tired, when life tightens its grip. Because life does tighten its grip. That is not pessimism, that is experience. So yes, live alone, live in peace, live freely, but live with a plan, with habits, with foresight. Otherwise, what feels like peace today can feel like a burden tomorrow, and the point is not to survive proudly. The point is to live with dignity. 6. Choose your circle carefully. Quality over quantity, because there is something worse than growing old alone, and that is growing old surrounded by the wrong people. People who come into your home to drain you, criticize you, compare themselves to you, leave you unsettled, and then walk away as if nothing happened. That kind of company is extremely expensive, even when it is free. When an older woman lives alone, her circle becomes more important, not less. Because the social momentum of couplehood is no longer there, the let's go see so-and-so commitments are gone, the events you attended out of habit disappear. Now every meeting is a choice, and that is when you see who adds to your life and who comes to fill themselves up with your energy like you are a public charging station. A lot of people fool themselves here. They think any company is good company if it keeps them from feeling alone, and so they end up tolerating mediocre friendships, intrusive relatives, people who think they have a right to comment on your life as if they were paying your bills. Then you go to bed with your mind in knots and say solitude is hard. No, what is hard is your lack of discernment. In the middle of this chapter, another question cuts straight to the truth. Would you rather be accompanied, or would you rather be at peace? Because if you choose company at any price, you will sell yourself cheap. You will accept empty conversations, criticism disguised as, "I'm only saying this for your own good," visits that throw off both your home and your mood, and on top of that, you will be grateful, as if they were doing you a favor just by showing up. Seneca, a practical man who understood social pressure well, said something that fits perfectly here. The best company is the kind that makes you better, not the kind that merely entertains you. And he did not say that like a poet. He said it like someone who had watched people rot by surrounding themselves with those who bring out the worst in them. Choosing your circle is choosing your future. At a certain age, time becomes more valuable and patience grows shorter, and that is perfectly fine. You do not have to maintain relationships out of pity. You do not have to keep everyone in your life just to prove that you are good. Being good does not mean letting anyone in. Being good means respecting yourself enough to have standards. And this includes something that is sometimes harder than ending a relationship. Ending an old friendship that no longer reflects who you are, or creating distance from that person who always brings drama as if it were a hobby. That is not cruelty, it is hygiene. Just as you clean your house, you clean up your human environment. A home does not feel lonely when it is well inhabited by your own peace. It feels lonely when you fill it with people who make you feel small. So choose few and choose well. Because the right circle does not take away your independence, it protects it. And the wrong circle may keep you company, yes, but it will aid you from the inside out. 7. Learn to handle desire, intimacy, and affection without falling into desperation. Because living alone does not switch off your body, your desire, or the human need for contact. What changes is that you no longer have someone there by default, and that is where many women get confused and end up in trouble because of emotional hunger. Desire, when you do not understand it, rules you. It makes you text someone you should not. It makes you go back to doors that already humiliated you. It makes you accept crumbs of attention as if they were feasts. And the worst part is that you do it with a smile, saying that you are just enjoying yourself. Sure, enjoying the knot in your stomach and the anxiety of being left on read. Intimacy is not just about sex. It is safety, it is care. It is feeling chosen without feeling used, and at a certain age that becomes more delicate. Because you are no longer here for silly games, for ambiguity, for people who show up when it suits them and disappear when you need clarity. A woman who lives alone and respects herself does not step into someone else's life just to be a distraction. In the middle of this topic, there is a question that can save you from a lot of bad falls. Are you looking for affection, or are you looking for anesthesia? Because when you are tired or vulnerable, the mind starts romanticizing any crumb. Suddenly, a message feels like destiny. A mediocre date feels like something. And that is where you sell yourself short, not because of desire, but because of need. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and knew what it meant to have no control over anything, said it with brutal clarity. If you want to be free, you cannot hand over your peace to what depends on other people. He did not say that so you would live dry and alone. He said it so you would not become a hostage to someone else's whims. And intimacy, when it turns into a mechanism to keep you from feeling alone, makes you a hostage. So learn to handle it with a cool head and a steady heart. You can have desire and still have boundaries. You can want companionship without losing your dignity. You can open the door without letting just anyone come in and turn your soul upside down. Because the problem is not wanting, the problem is begging. And here is an irony that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. There are women who feel lonelier inside a relationship than they do at home in silence. Because a relationship without respect is loneliness with witnesses. On the other hand, a life lived alone with good judgment is peace with backbone. So yes, guard your emotional life the way you guard your money. Not out of fear, but out of intelligence. Not out of coldness, but out of self-respect. Because when you get desperate, you choose badly. And when you choose badly, what you were looking for as affection ends up becoming wear and tear. 8. Build routines, purpose, and structure so your home does not become a prison. Because living alone can be freedom, but it can also become confinement if your life shrinks to 4 walls, background television, and days that repeat without meaning. And no, that is not fixed by having a positive attitude. It is fixed with structure. Routine is not boredom, it is support. It is what keeps you steady when you do not feel like doing anything. When your mood is low, when the day feels grey. If there is no structure, your mind takes over. And when your mind takes over on bad days, it drags you down. It convinces you to stay in pajamas, not go out, put everything off, isolate yourself for a while. And that while turns into months. Purpose is not just a pretty phrase either. It is a real reason to get up. It can be learning something, taking care of your body, helping someone, creating, teaching, showing up for others, working on something that makes you feel alive. Whatever it is, it has to require your presence. Because when you have no purpose, you start living in waiting mode. Waiting for something to happen, waiting for someone to text, waiting for life to entertain you. And life does not entertain you, life passes. In the middle of this point, another question appears, the kind that leaves you standing in the kitchen with a cup in your hand thinking, are you living in your home, or are you hiding in it? Because there is a huge difference between rest and permanent refuge. Rest restores you. Hiding dims you. Structure is built with simple things but done consistently. A decent schedule. Daily movement even if it is only a little. Food that takes care of you, not punishes you. A tidy space that does not depress you. Planned outings so the world does not become that thing happening out there. Chosen human contact even if brief so your heart does not become rigid. And no, this is not about filling your day with activities so you do not have to feel. It is about having a framework that holds you up so you can feel without sinking. Because when you live alone, your home amplifies your inner state. If you are well, it becomes a temple. If you are not and you have no structure, it becomes a cave. So turn it into a temple, not with luxury but with intention. with habits, with meaning, with a life that does not depend on someone showing up to rescue you from boredom. Because when you create your own rhythm, your home stops being a prison and becomes your territory. And in your territory, you are in charge. 9. Build strong self-love and become your own best company. Because in the end, what determines whether living alone feels like peace or punishment is not the house, it is the relationship you have with yourself. There are women who live with others and treat themselves worse than their worst enemy. And there are women who live alone and for the first time speak to themselves with respect, care for themselves, and hold themselves up. Self-love is not looking in the mirror and saying nice things to yourself when you're in a good mood. That is emotional makeup. Strong self-love is loyalty. It is not betraying yourself for a lukewarm conversation, a half-made promise, or a let's see what happens that leaves you hanging on nothing. It is choosing yourself even when no one is watching and no one is applauding. And solitude has a virtue that scares a lot of people. It leaves you with no excuses. When you are alone, you cannot blame your partner, the environment, the noise, or the dynamic. It is you and your mind, you and your habits, you and what you tell yourself inside. And that is where the real work shows up, because it is not about filling your schedule, it is about putting your mind in order. The first act of self-love is treating yourself the way you would treat someone you truly love, with boundaries, with care, and with honesty. You would not leave them in a place where they are humiliated. You would not leave them with someone who confuses them. You would not leave them without sleep, without good food, without movement, without checkups. So why do that to yourself? Why is more or less good enough when it comes to you? And here comes a question that hurts but wakes you up. If you were your own friend, if you were someone you wanted to protect, would you recommend your life exactly as you are living it now? Or would you tell yourself enough is enough, that it is time to stop surviving with pride and start living with respect? Becoming your own best company does not mean shutting yourself off from the world. It means the world no longer decides your worth. If someone comes into your life, they come to add something, not to rescue you. If there is affection, you enjoy it, but you do not need it like oxygen. Because when you can hold yourself up, love stops being a crutch and becomes a gift. Seneca said it centuries ago, with the sobriety of someone who had already seen too many masks fall. The wise person is content with themselves, not because they despise others, but because they have learned not to depend on them for stability. And he was not speaking from an isolated cave. He was speaking from the center of Roman power, surrounded by people, and even then he understood that real stability is internal, or it is nothing. That is why strong self-love also shows in what you allow. Who you open the door to, who you answer, who you give your time to. It shows in your standards, in your everyday dignity, in how you get back up after a bad day without dramatizing it, but without ignoring it either. It shows in the fact that you are no longer begging yourself for scraps. So yes, an older woman who lives alone may be alone on the calendar, but accompanied by something most people do not have: inner coherence, peace with backbone. And when you become your own best company, you stop being afraid of solitude, because it is no longer emptiness. It is your territory. In the end, the truth is simple, and it makes many people uncomfortable. Living alone is not a label of defeat. It is a way of life that requires maturity. It has a cost, of course, but it also gives back control, judgment, and peace when you learn to stop pleasing. Take care of your resources and stop trading your dignity for company. Now it is your turn to bring this into your life through action, not pretty ideas. Look at your circle, look at your habits, look at your health, look at your finances, and decide today what you are going to protect. Independence is not sustained by pride. It is sustained by structure and by strong self-love, the kind that does not negotiate what is essential just because it bothers other people. If this video left you thinking, subscribe and join me in this training of character. And I want to hear from you. Write the phrase, "I am Stoic" in the comments, and tell me what country you are listening from, so we can make this space a community of people who truly respect themselves, not just in words. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. 2 recommended videos will appear on your screen so you can keep going deeper on this path. Pick one and continue. Because when you become the owner of your peace, there is no solitude left to scare you, only a life that is finally falling into order.